Welcome back, and today we've got an MSD80 that's got a little bit wet. So let's start with the story of this one. So the car had been sitting for quite some time, and again the guy wanted to get it back on the road. This thing wasn't starting. Apparently it would crank occasionally, but it wouldn't fire up. So I go out to it, and one of the first things I noticed then is I can't get the ignition on, and I don't hear the steering lock open. Now there can be a bunch of different reasons why the steering lock doesn't open on these. A common one that people might bump into every now and again is water in the comfort access door handles, and that shorts a line which the CAS uses to talk to the steering lock and the door handles, and that means then your ignition won't come on. If you have one of those, go find your comfort access module in the boot, unplug it, and you should find your dash comes on. I've also come across them where it is a broken earth ground strap on the engine, and it tries to ground itself through the CAS. That won't get the ignition on. And there has been sometimes as well where there's no power going to the steering lock because something like a seat mat is shorted, and that also does the same thing. But going into it, the CAS didn't really have any errors to do with the steering lock. I tried the steering lock reset, but that's one of the things. It normally tends to work when you still hear the steering lock going and there's an error, but on this one it was completely dead. So after trying some simple things like unplugging the IBS and unplugging a seat mat, none of that made any difference. I did check the engine earth strap, that was okay. There was no floating voltages on the engine block, so I decided to see if I could give 12 volt wake up to this engine ECU, would I be able to get it to fire up myself? So I got into the plugs and I was going into it, and that's when I seen this corrosion in here on this main connector. There's a little bit on that there as well. I have gone and given it a little bit of a clean up. That was mainly just sort of a lick with a file to take off the worst stuff and see what it was like. But one of the things I noticed then, as soon as this was unplugged, we managed to get our ignition on. So although the CAS wasn't giving any codes, the engine ECU did have one for the EWS signal line. Now at this point I wasn't really too concerned with that. The main thing I was thinking was, like, we want to get the ignition on first and get proper diagnostics. We can sort out immobilizer stuff afterwards. It might just be a line break. But it turns out that then it was somehow linked, and it seems like that line also goes through and is involved with the steering lock. As soon as this was unplugged, the rest of the stuff came on. I brought the ECU home with me then, as the first thing I wanted to do was at least make sure that I can back up all the data on this and see if we're able to clone it, as we want to get that done as soon as possible so we have all the data. And it was fine. It managed to read all the details out, so we have got a save point. That's pretty good. And the next thing then was to have a look inside and see if any water got inside, and that's where we've got some more issues. And we can see that yes, the water has got inside. So the little run coming down here, we're on top of that little 8-pin chip, down up to this capacitor. The run carries on down here, then ends up just down there, the ribbon cable. Our other board, which is our high voltage side, he's doing absolutely fine. I don't see any traces of damp inside of that one. It's only really on this one here. And again, there's no signs of it on the other side of the board either. So that's what we're going to have a look at. I have a spare reference board, and since we managed to get a clone, I'm going to first off clone this into a spare, and then before I do anything, I'm going to have a look and see what's happening on this EWS signal line. This is my spare reference board, and we have our full backup that we read out of the water damage one, and we're just going to load that directly into this one. And then what I've got to do is I've got to track down the immobilizer pin and have a look at it on the oscilloscope and see what's going on with that. Well, there's no reaction at all on the oscilloscope. This is the known good one, or at least I believe it's good, and I'm connected up onto the line. It's coming out of that orange wire, but we're not seeing anything happen on there. So I'm guessing that's normal, and I guess it probably only just takes signals in, but I'm fairly sure I'm on the right track, as it is this second pin in there. Pin 15 is the one, and that is one of the ones that is pretty rusty. So the next thing I'm going to look at, I'm going to look at resistance out of these, and also I'm going to track where it goes to inside that ECU. So there he is, and certainly he has been wet. He's been wetter than he is at the moment, at least anyway. But every test that I've done, checking resistance between various different legs and various different combinations to power and to ground, I'm not showing anything different on this as the good one. So it might have been that the last time I had issues, it might have actually still been damp at that same time. So I'm going to give it a clean up. We'll get these other bits and pieces off there by that capacitor, by our can chips, and also down here at the bottom, and it does go underneath there a little bit. I'm going to clean all that stuff up, and we'll have to then have a look back and see if we can spot anything unusual. And we're looking pretty good. So after cleaning that up, I've got now, I suppose there's no traces you could see that water had got into that ECU. All apart from, you can just see a little bit of blue there on that plastic hiding in that plug. Can't quite get into that, but I'm not finding any shorts between any pins or anything else apart from stuff that's in the meg ohm range, and that's less than me touching both ends of the multimeter at the same time. These plugs as well, I've gone in there and I've cleaned those out. So now that this is cleaned up and all looking pretty good, and I have a separate clone, what I'm going to do is we're going to try them both out on the car and see if this one is now going to be working as normal. And then we've also got our backup, which is our clone one, as there is always a chance that the corrosion is there. But what if it's in the plug in the ECU and not the ECU itself? Right, we are here in the 335i. We have the original damp ECU in that I've cleaned up. And this is going to be our very first check. If I put the key in, do we hear the steering lock coming off? We do. Oh, hang on. Yep, well, that was an on-off on. And we have our dash coming on properly. So that appears to be working. Let's give it a quick crank. So automatic, we're in park, foot on the brake. Oh, right, okay, we are very low on power. So we do have a charger on. It's on the programming mode at the moment, but I'm guessing it's struggling to keep up. I've also got a Nocco boost pack at the front. So let me just switch on the Nocco and see if that helps. Okay, I think we have the Nocco on now. I pressed the button. Let's go again and see what happens. We are getting cranking. Right, fantastic. So again, we've got issues. Actually, have we got our check engine light coming on? Dab, dab. We have, yeah. So let's have a look now with the diagnostics and see what we're getting on that. And here are the faults that we have after clearing stuff down. So we do have this DME master relay shift delay. I haven't looked into the wiring of that just yet. There is likely going to be a relay that powers on well, the injectors in this one. The coil, sorry, the injectors are going to be in the engine ECU, but the ignition coils will have some sort of a live feed. We also have none of the media stuff working. There is a code there for JBE supply terminal 30GF. I think that might be the one that supplies that other bits and pieces. But the cup holder, no faults whatsoever. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to hit the button on the Nocco again, give it a bit more power, and then I'm going to give it a crank and look at some value. So what I want to do is look at stuff like fuel pressure and see if that's building up. Nocco a go-go, and we have, so this is just reading out some of the fuel pressure. This is the high pressure side. To be honest, that actually looks like it's doing something. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen on that, but we can't read low and high pressure at the same time. Got to pick one or the other. So foot on the brake, let's go cranking and see what happens. Well, he certainly got up there. Right. But so we're getting our pressure, but we're not getting it firing. So I wonder then if this master relay is going to be our issue. Let's have a look into the wiring for that. Well, according to that, this DME relay is hanging around in the junction box, and the junction box is hanging around over there. So I've already been poking around the junction box. That was taken off and swapped, and I have checked some things like the big power connector on the back. I see it has had the recall done and changed the power lead, but I wonder if that's got anything to do with it. The wiring diagram doesn't show much further apart from it going into the engine ECU, and then it is saying replace that relay. So if that's the issue, then maybe that's it. That relay might not be giving out the power, and it's a relay there in the top corner. I believe that has already been swapped. I, in fact, am going to go and try my other ECU in case it is still corrosion and the power feed. I put my spare ECU in. Something certainly different, as I hear something wearing away. I think that might be the electric water pump on these, but let's go now for a crank and see what happens with the other ECU. Well, I had to be careful not to swear, but there we go, it's awake. So we still have, I guess, some kind of issue with that ECU and the power from that, but it's the first time this has started up in quite some time. So let's let him just idle and start doing something and see if it gets better. We'll have a look on the diagnostics as well. He is always misfiring a little bit now. He's not too happy, but yeah, we'll have a look and see what the diagnostics is saying. Bit of smoke blowing out the front there. I'm sure it's all right. So there is our two ECUs. This was our original one which got damp. It's still possible that it's down to some corrosion on those pins, or maybe something else internal, but this is our cloned one over here, and he's up and he's awake. It's not sounding too bad now, so the bit of smoke we would have seen would be from various bits of oil leaks. I'd most likely the rocker cover gasket's been dripping down the side of the engine, but it's awake and it is idling not too bad. So I'm going to have another check through on the codes and see how it's doing and see what else is going on and see if it's got any other issues. It is pretty loud and it does sound very misfiery. We don't see a check engine light for it though. If that was a full cylinder shut off, I'm sure it would have put the check engine light on by now, but yeah, I'm scanning it through, and in fact that felt like a stronger misfire there. I'm going to check it through and see if the engine ECU is reporting anything else differently. Well, there are a load of codes in there, but a lot of those are going to be from me unplugging the engine ECU to swap them. Things like this throttle potentiometer, they're all showing as not currently existent, and we see they're like misfire cylinder 1, not currently existing. So that seems to be okay. Intelligent battery sensor, I unplugged that earlier on. Incorrect data record, not really showing up. That was from powering up this thing, the ECU without a CAS. So that does seem to be fairly decent, even if he is on the lumpy and boomy side. There is our operational smoothness. So according to that, it's not really picking up anything as any kind of misfires. So that seems to be okay. It certainly feels very lumpy. I wonder if that's maybe something like engine mounts that are passing that vibration into the car. But other than that, it looks like we have this fixed, and we had an issue with the engine ECU where it wasn't able to get power in or out to certain parts, and now with that spare ECU we're up and running. And there we go. So job done, and we have it running. Sounds a little bit lumpy, but honestly it's not as bad as it seems according to asking the ECU. So there we go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.